Hey, Gabby. Hey, Kia. Hey, Solace. Hey. How have you guys been? Lila, thank you for the Twitch Prime Gaming sub for 3 months. Another week draws to a close, for sure. God, this week was like one of those where it felt very long and also went by very fast. Like, I thought it was Friday yesterday, but also when Thursday rolled around, I was like, whoa. Felt like Wednesday. It was all sorts of weird. But we did make it to Friday, for sure. Hey, Kickslap. How have I been? I have been busy, but it's been good. Yeah. Busy's definitely the word for it. But we're working through it. You know, getting by week to week. I honestly, like, recently I've kind of realized what people mean when they say, like, when you start working, time flies so fast. I used to think, you know, it was like school, where you kind of just work until you get those, like, predetermined breaks and stuff, and then I realized, oh, you don't get predetermined breaks when you work. You get specific days off, although I get unlimited PTO, so my situation's slightly better than a lot of other people's. But it's like you don't get days to work towards other than like holidays. So it's not the same as school where time passes that way, because at least with school you could segment it into like semesters or quarters or trimesters or however much. But I'm coming up on like almost a year at the place that I'm working at, and it does not feel like a year. So it's been really interesting kind of experiencing this for the first time. It'll be baby's first year working full-time at a development studio. So as they say, most people only have like what, 7 to 10 years in the industry, so one down. But no, it's been really interesting, and time goes by really fast and also really slow depending on how much you have to do during the week. And I've definitely been feeling that, like, time isn't real, time is just a social construct kind of feeling. Hello! I've been doing character designs for homework. Hopefully you've been doing well this week. Yeah. Character design homework, that's fun. I feel like I haven't thought about character design homework in a really long time. I've been kind of busy. But, you know, chugging along. Since we're just kind of... I still need to, like, make the art for the sharing the link around, so I might just show that while we're waiting. The, like, you know, I always post, like, art to go with the like live streaming notification. I woke up from a nap like 30 minutes ago, and I still haven't woken up. So, I didn't make the art because I was just sitting here staring at the wall like, whoa. Because I took a nap after work, and then I did a leap in time because I felt like I didn't actually get to sleep. I just instantly woke up to my alarm going off. So I didn't actually get to draw the thing. So I'm gonna do that now, and then we're gonna get to drawing the commissions, because I also need to warm up a little bit with just drawing, because I haven't been doing that in a hot minute. Naps, like, they're both time machines and like they just really mess up my brain, because like I almost never have like good naps where I wake up feeling actually more refreshed than before. The only times that works is if I've already kind of been feeling like I haven't rested at all, and the nap is just like, okay, well, we can't get any worse than this, I guess. It sends me back to when I was making the Class 101 videos, and there are days where I'd work from 7 p.m. until like 5 a.m. on the videos after work, and then I would take an hour-and-a-half nap from 5 a.m. to like 6:30, and then I'd work on the videos, and then I'd start working my day job, and then I'd do that every day. Those were the times when naps actually worked out. I actually benefited a lot from the nap, because I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, alright, I slept a little bit, let's keep going. But yeah, on a normal day though, naps are not as helpful as I wish they were, even though I've been taking naps like pretty much every day. At like 2, I'm like, oh, I must take 30 minute nap. Kickslap, thank you for the Twitch Prime Gaming sub for 2 months. Why did it take me so long to to say? I will hydrate. Are you also doing anything related for Spooktober? Not particularly. I feel like I've been kind of disillusioned from a lot of those like Tober type bandwagon stuff for any month really. If I want to draw something related to it, like I will, but beyond just drawing like maybe a Halloween image, perhaps, mayhaps, I don't know if I'll actually like do the challenge. I don't think my appreciation, or like my energy level and my appreciation for art extends to like, oh hey, you know, if you're gonna do art for fun, then do this challenge where you have to do a certain type of art. I don't know. It's just like, I feel like my free time is better spent drawing whatever else I want to draw that month. Although I will say I haven't been doing a lot of drawing because I feel like I feel like I have to acknowledge the fact that I am kind of burnt out. And so in the past like week or so after I get off of work, I immediately log on to Final Fantasy XIV and start crafting. For some reason, I can't even bring myself to like play the actual like MSQ or actually doing any of the raids or I've been doing the raids. I've been doing the Nier raids, but I can't bring myself to actually play the game like it's supposed to be played. I've just been like crafting. Like somehow the crafting video game has like captured my piqued my interest. So I've just been like sewing and watching like video essays after work. So I feel like particularly this year I will not be doing any of those challenges, but I feel like I've never really been interested in them. Okay, I need to figure out how you can make money from in that game because I am so poor all the time. And I want to be not poor for once, so I can at least think about potentially owning a home in Final Fantasy 14. So I need to, well, to be fair, I'm not max level crafter or anything, so I don't know if I should just be that and then think about making money. Needing an interview for a class project for a school related thing to my career. Could I interview? It's only 10 questions. If you send me an email, I'll see if I can get back to you. You should also write, like, what time you need it by, because that might actually get me to do it when I see it versus, like, okay, I have to do this after work or something like that and I forget. Oh, you did? Okay, let me check my email then. Yeah, I don't know. I get really lazy looking at market board stuff, but I really should just look and see if there's anything that I can make that is currently something that people want to buy. This is not. I'm just drawing so I can, like, remember what it's like. Like, oh yeah, this is something I used to do in my free time. Currently working on how to find jobs in unrelated fields. I would like to seek jobs similar to what you do if you find a redevice. Yeah. I can't promise I'll get back to you in a timely manner. I usually try to work through those, but you may send me an email at any time. And if I have good answers for you that I feel like are helpful, I will send one back. D-Lizard, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub. Oh my god, Tojo, I recently fanted into a super cute girl for in 14, so I'm no longer my red-haired catboy. I'm a pink-haired Aura, and I feel so cute. I was like, wow, I actually don't play girl characters often in games. Like, I'm always usually playing a boy. Which I don't know why. I think I just always did it. And for once I was like, I'm gonna make a girl that's like cute, like unbearably cute, pastel pink flowers, all that. Um, because I don't play girls that often. And then I fanted into one of my retainers actually, because I made this retainer being like, what character have I never personally played that I would love to look at? Cute girls. So I made my retainer this like super cute femme. I guess they're called Ari for the girls. She was so cute. I kept looking at her and be like, wow, I wish I looked like her. And then I'm like, wait, I could just Fanta. uh, and so then I did, and I was doing the near raids, and oh my god, all of the near raid outfits look so good on girls. It's actually crazy. It's actually crazy how nice all the dresses and stuff look, because they're actually dresses. On the guys, they're just like weird. They're weird, like puffy jackets, and it's so gross. So I was so happy. I got all dressed up in a little cute dress, and I was like, oh, this makes me unreasonably happy. I can't believe it. I don't know. It was a cute experience I've been having, and now like I've been seeking out cute outfits for her, because I don't know. I've never gotten to experience playing that game as a girl. Have I seen Squid Game? No, I haven't. My friends have been watching it though, and they love it, it seems. So I might have to give it a shot, but I haven't really been in the show watching mood. Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about Eden. I will have to unlock those for sure. loosely inspired by the glamour that my dancer has on his arms, or used to have. I think they're called like bright linen gloves of aiming or something. It looks like an Urianger's like astrologian outfit, which I really like. I love the look of it. The rest of the costume does not look nearly as nice as the gloves themselves. So I only have the gloves because I got it from like a random drop, and they're very nice. I like them a lot. Hello, Dawn. Yeah, I think so. Even though I've switched to the near dresses, I still have those. I don't actually like the gloves, the short gloves, so I've kept these like longer gloves. They look really nice actually, combined. Ryozuno, thank you for the tier 1 sub. Thank you, thank you. So I used to main Dragoon. At least that was the first class I really took to 80, but honestly lately I've been really liking Dancer. I think Dancer is first, Red Mage second, Dragoon third at this point. Mainly because I feel like I haven't played Dragoon a lot recently, and I feel kind of rusty on it, so I don't know if I'd actually be able to be a good Dragoon. I feel like I don't remember my rotation anymore. If I were to play a caster, I would definitely play Summoner. But unfortunately, I am allergic to the cast bar. So every time I see it, I get unreasonably angry. That's why I can play Red Mage, because at least the cast bar is part of the mechanic where I can move. But like every time I see the cast bar, it takes so unbearably long. And I'm someone who like is single-handedly saved so many times because of Monavant, which is the dancer ability. Like without Onavant, I would die all the time because I have very poor reflexes when it comes to mechanics. I'm not totally 100% sure on how to do. And Onavant sometimes makes it look like I know what to do. And saves the healer the headache of having to raise a dumbass DPS. But I don't really want to think about if I had to stand there and cast and try to get out of mechanics. I don't know if I could do it. I picked with the long, slender ones that go back, I think. They're like super long and thin. Sent in your first application for art college? Congrats! Black Mage is my worst nightmare. I tried to play Black Mage at one point because I was kind of interested in the like power fantasy of it. Absolutely not. Black Mage is unforgivable. It's everything I hate. Yeah, the Popo are coming for me. Sorry, guys. This is actually my last stand. Oh, that's really cute. I think those are the horns that I picked for my, my guy. When I first went Aura. I am debating using another Fanta just to change the horn style, because I'm thinking about it. I also wanted to change her eye color, because her eye colors are like spring green, which is fine, but it doesn't bring the impact, that the focus, you know, to her face. And I really adored the eye color that I picked for my other guy, so I might Fanta just to change like those things. Do I think art college is worth it? Like, if you have the opportunity to go, should you? I don't think you should think about it in that way. I think if you do have the ability to like to consider art college as like a viable solution, then ultimately from then you have to think about like how do you learn the best? Do you need actual like close one-on-one help? Would it be beneficial for you to be working with other people in your class and be meeting new people? Because you know, I feel like that's a part of the experience that you don't really get going to online courses. As much as they would like to, you know, you join a Discord, you start talking with people in class, but it's honestly not the same experience. And I think schools are still in a position to offer that to you in a way that's difficult to replicate. I think the kind of long-term experience you have at a school is also like a really good way to just kind of grow up as a person, in a way that, you know, teaching yourself and homeschooling in that same way, you struggle to make those same sort of or have those same sort of experiences. I think school for me was very beneficial. I definitely appreciated my time at school, and I don't regret it. I'd say that's not the case for everyone, and for some people I know, I think school, even if it did help them, still left a bad taste in their mouth, which is fine, right? Everyone has their own experiences, so I can't say for you whether or not it's like a true and honest yes, because it really depends on your situation. If you can go to school, I would definitely consider it, but you don't have to go. I'd say my choice to go was very good for me. But I've also seen people do perfectly fine without having gone. Yeah, so there should be English subtitles now on all the videos. There is no saying if I'll ever be able to get translated subtitles, but English is definitely up there now. I heard that it performs a lot better on the PC. I hope they do, what is it? Transferring save data? Because if they do, then maybe I'll actually be able to catch up and play with my friends who have been playing Rise. Well, doesn't that just suck? Have they never done it? I thought they used to do it. But World was the first time they didn't. Or one of the first, I guess. I don't know what that means. Oh, I've literally never heard that term used before. Where is it from? Parody? This is like the aughts situation where like everyone's like, yeah, of course, this word is used all the time. And I'm like, what? How have I gone through like 23 years of existence and never ever heard the word aught, parody, any of these things? Peach? She's been doing good. She's not sneezing nearly as much anymore. She does still kind of sniffle, and her eyes are kind of watery, but that might just be like dust and stuff. She still goes under my bed, which I can't dust that as much as I would love to, because it has stuff underneath it. She always goes down there, so it's probably why she's sniffly. We got her this laser toy. It's technically for both cats, but Peach plays with it a lot, and it's to the point where like every time I leave the room, she follows me so that she's hoping that I'll play with her, which I do because I feel bad. I haven't been able to play with her a lot since I've been working, so I try to play with her every time I go out of my room for the kitchen or the bathroom or whatever, but I'm suspicious. I think Peach is she might actually have intelligence, which is like the scariest thought I've had in a while. The idea that Peach has intelligence is a little bit frightening, because when I play with her with the laser pointer, it used to be like the first few days of her playing with it, she'd be going buck wild, right, for the laser pointer, and following it around and like doing donuts and stuff. It was pretty great. And then like a couple days in, she would play with the point wherever the laser was pointing, right? But then she'd start looking at the pointer itself. And I'm like, no, Peach, don't look at it. Don't look at where the magic's coming from. And she just started like looking at the pointer as opposed to playing with the laser. And I'm like, this is tragic. What if she doesn't want to play with the toy anymore because she knows where it's coming from now? This is like when kids find out about Santa and like the Tooth Fairy. What if everything's crashing down? What if she's ruining her own enjoyment of this toy? And like I kept trying to get her to stop looking at it, but then she would keep looking at it, and now I'm very concerned that I think she's getting too smart. But the idea of her being smart is terrifying for a multitude of reasons. Because, like, Peach's behavior in a lot of days is forgivable because we allow her to... We kind of have prescribed upon her the idea that she lacks intent. She's not a bad cat. She lacks intent in all of her actions, so she can't actually be evil. She just does things on a whim because she has a sudden need or feeling to do so. So whenever she's being a criminal and trying to sneak bites out of my roommate's food, it's not because she's actively a terrible, scoundrel. She's not actively trying to be a criminal. It's just that she sees the food and she's hungry, and she's just like, I want some, and then that's all the motivation she needs to try and steal a couple nibbles. But if she's actually intelligent, that means that every time we catch her in the act and we're like, Peach, no, have a conscience, She does have a conscience. She just looks us in the eye and ignores her conscience. Which, I'm not sure if I'm prepared to, like, come to terms with the fact that my cat is not only, like, I don't know, not only semi-sentient, but also has malicious intent. I'm a bit scared. The odds. Can you tell? Oh, I hit the mic. Can you tell us the best way to practice line art and good tips on focus on whenever you try to study someone's line art? So it helps to know, like, the different types of things that go into line art. And I cover this in my class, but line art is defined by a couple different things. I forget what I emphasized in the class, because I feel like I tried to make it a little succinct, but much more succinct in my class because I wrote the script. But you're looking at a couple of things when it comes to line art. You're looking at line weight. You're looking at speed. You're looking at rhythm, flow, and you're looking at, like, the rule sets by which they create the line art. Because sometimes line art is able to denote different things in a drawing depending on what method they're subscribing to or what philosophy they subscribe to. Some people only make line art for a very utilitarian reason. When lines are thin, it's either because whatever it's describing is in light, has light shown on it, or it's far away in perspective. If it's darker, that means it's in shadow, or it's closer to us. Like, they abide by those rules. It's very strict. Some people have very strict line weight parameters, like they always increase line weight when they're making X curve or when they're drawing a certain feature or something like that. Some people are very all over the place, like I am. I don't really have set rules. I kind of just do whatever I think is right, but I also do have certain things that I follow, which is, you know, things that are in shadow I tend to make slightly thicker. Not always, but sometimes. Some people tend to draw really fast, and so their lines are a lot less, like, specific and detailed, but has a lot more energy. People that draw slower and more methodically will have a lot more detail, but a lot less of that innate movement and flow. What was the other one? Speed. Being... like, speed also kind of being an attribute for, not only, like, the type of lines that they draw, but also just kind of, like, the look that they're going for. And, like, all of these things kind of coalescing into the same stuff. Sometimes people's line arts are defined by the brush that they use. All these different things kind of coming together to sort of create a look. It's like different parts of a recipe you kind of have to figure out. So, when you're studying line art, you kind of have to recognize, like, okay, what are the hallmarks of this thing? Do they use a very specific brush? Are they, you know, do they look like they're drawing at a certain speed? If you can watch videos of them drawing, like, can you suss out whether or not they're, you know, they draw typically very fast? Is it relatively normal? Do they have a particular part when they're drawing something that they speed up in, or do they slow down at certain parts? Is there any, like, consistent rule set that you see in their work that might denote X philosophy, like thick versus thin, light and shadow, overall consistent line weights, no change in pressure, stuff like that. And, like, understanding what components go into someone's personal tastes and how that reflects, you know, what they draw and the look that they're going for and the atmosphere that they're trying to achieve. in a lot of ways, it's very much like painting, in that sense. There's a lot of different habits people have with line art. Just like people have different habits and styles when it comes to painting, just like people have different styles and habits when it comes to just drawing in general. So those are the things I recommend looking out for, and kind of comparing, like, okay, what are the things that you like about their stuff, why you're studying them, and figuring out what is it about your work that's kind of missing. Because it could just be that you're not as confident drawing the things that you're drawing as much as they are. It could be that, right, I did this for a reason. It could be that they are, kind of trying to achieve a very specific, like, aesthetic, and that wraps up a bunch of different techniques and stuff into it. Hatching, people that draw things just to look like pencil drawings, and people that try to make it look like brushwork, all that kind of stuff. So all a ton of different techniques kind of wrapping up into someone's line art style will affect what you need to focus on. I generally don't have a very, like, I guess, like, static way to study things, mainly because I don't study stuff. I find it very boring. But when the times that I do, I try to do a lot of comparison between my work and theirs, and trying to figure out, like, where are the concrete things that are different between my work and their work, and how do I bridge that gap? What are the skills that I'm missing in that sense? All that sort of stuff, I guess, in a long-winded way of saying. Okay, now I can finally post this on stuff. 'Cause you know what? It's time we moved on. So I'm gonna post this on Twitter and then Instagram, and then we can get started on things. How do you study someone's art style? Do you just kind of redraw it and see how it works? Do you try drawing in a completely different way than your usual process? Oh, a raid. Sorry, I'm so far behind. Sean, thank you for the raid. I hope your stream went well. Sorry, I'm, like, currently trying to catch up on questions and also put out, like, I'm streaming notifications, so give me a second. But thank you so much for the raid. I really appreciate it. But let's see. When you're looking at someone's art style, I typically recommend that you're looking at it from the perspective of, like, what are the building blocks someone is using to create a certain look. Because I think personally styles are kind of overrated, but that's neither here nor there. So if you're going to be trying to replicate someone's style, you have to look at it from the sense of, like, okay, so this is a set of equations, this is a set of techniques and habits and personal preferences wrapped up into one thing. What about this person's work that I like, that I want to replicate? What part of their art style or their habits do I want to start integrating into mine? Why are those habits and styles something that I want to be, are those styles and stuff helpful to me? Like, what is it driving? What is it, a personal preference? Do I just like that look of that art? Or, is it something else? Once you start getting into those things, you can start thinking like, okay, so what skills am I missing? What do I need to start working on? Is it just a technique that I have to learn, or is it actually like I have to be more comfortable with drawing? Because something that a lot of people don't understand when they start doing studies and stuff is like getting comfortable drawing and being used to drawing certain objects, being more comfortable with certain materials and stuff like that. That is a legitimate thing you can't force. You can't force comfort when it comes to drawing. That's something you build only with time and experience and practice and habit. That comes because you have pushed yourself to experience and draw a ton of different things, that you push your boundaries. You try drawing different objects. You seek out and learn how to draw different objects. And so as you gain a better perspective on drawing all those sorts of things, to the point where even if you never necessarily drew X thing before, you can feasibly be able to draw it with given enough reference and technical material. At that point, it becomes a lot easier for that execution to not be as big of a problem. For people that are trying to do style studies before they've gotten used to drawing, it feels as if, like, no matter how much you study someone's art, it always feels like what you do is a derivative of their work. That's the case because it is a derivative. You aren't actually understanding why this person is doing or making X decision. You're just regurgitating what you see because you assume that that's the way they draw it. But if you were to draw something else in that style, not copying a piece of their work or how they draw it, you wouldn't be able to replicate it authentically in a way that I think is what you want. Maybe you see a face and you're like, I want to draw a face like that, but can you draw that face in any other perspective, in any other angle? Probably not. If you wanted to replicate someone's line art style, would you always have to be referencing that one image with that specific, like, type of line art, specific rule sets, whatever it looked like, to kind of come up with and apply to any other piece that you do, because you don't actually understand why they make those choices? All you know is that, oh, they put pitch shadows here, and oh, they tend to draw, like, they don't draw noses, or they draw their eyes this way, or whatever. It's like, you're just Frankensteining things, but you don't really understand how they work together. That kind of stuff happens when you're not necessarily comfortable with drawing. And that's kind of why whenever people ask me, like, how do you do style studies, it's not really about copying the style. It's about understanding what it is that you don't do, that they do, that you want to know how to do. And the more specific you can get about it, the better, too, I feel like, because not only will at that point you be learning what is it that I like, what are my tastes, what do I like to do, what are my interests moving forward that I want to achieve. Not only is that the case, but also that you start building your ability to critically judge things in a way that you can break down the technical aspects. You can start kind of simplifying complex concepts and be able to problem solve in that way. That skill is invaluable as an artist in a way that no one can teach you how to do that. You have to learn how you think, how you approach those things, how you break things down. To take things at face value is fine for a lot of things, but there's a limit to how far that can take you. And just saying, like, hey, I want to draw like X person is a very surface level way to see it, because all you saw was, I like their art, I want to draw like them, I want to be as good as them, without thinking about what they're doing, what decisions they're making that is helping them achieve a certain effect that is in line with their preferences, their aesthetics, their personal tastes. That's kind of why I take a very roundabout way of explaining those things. But that's also why my process for those things, I gave it a name, I think, called ref and recall, where you do a study of X thing, in a way, a master copy. You take a little bit of time away from it, and then you try to apply the things that you learned from that master copy to a completely fresh drawing, something that you personally draw that has nothing to do with the original. And you see how much you remember. You see how much you actually applied, because what you actually take away from something is what's actually important. It doesn't matter if you can replicate that person's drawing again. That has functionally nothing to do with actually learning anything. Just because you regurgitate an equation doesn't mean you actually knew the concept. And so, as you try to apply things, obviously there is stuff that you're going to forget, that you're going to revert back to old habits. It's what you actually do remember, it's what you actually take away that's really important, that you slowly add into your repertoire of habits, of knowledge, that will make effective, lasting change. It's not the immediate things of like, oh, they draw their eyes this way. It's like, they specifically chose to, increase their line weight in X places because it helps give it a little bit more of a grounded look. Or they don't do any of that. They just have straight, clean lines, maybe for a functional purpose, or maybe just because they like the look of it, and it gives it a very specific feel. I just need to learn how to apply that in a way that looks authentic and not just ham-fisted, So that's kind of why the question is so complicated. And sort of why I tend to not want to, I guess, like, I don't know, I don't really want to, like, give people information in the way that it's like, oh, if you do this thing, you can achieve X thing. It doesn't typically work that way. Sorry, I've been trying to, like, write this thing, but I can't multitask. So if I answer something, I'm always like, okay, I have to stop, answer, then go back to what I was doing. Hold. Okay. Catching up on stuff. What canvas size do you mostly draw on? I usually do 11 by 17, although recently for work I've been going straight to 30 inches. 30 inches by 30 inches. Which has been real big, but I've been defaulting. Okay, so let's get started on stuff. Thank God I've remembered to change the thing so you don't see what any windows beyond the Photoshop one. Steven, thank you for the tier 1 sub for 13 months. What size is your desk? Not big enough. That's the size. Yeah, I mean, every choice an artist makes has some impact on the final look. Like, why would they choose to do that? Some people really like the kind of childlike doodle. So when they draw stuff, they're very purposefully not clean. They don't try to go for super smooth lines. They use a certain brush, like all those things. They all impact how the final piece looks, and there's a reason for that. Understanding why that is, why that's relevant to you, why you want to achieve that look is, I think, a lot more important than just knowing how to redraw someone's piece. I am doing the window capture, I think. Okay, so now... Gary?
Hello.
Look, everyone, Gary's here.
Sorry, Mikey, did I
Well, a clean sketch makes the line art easier. Oh, yeah. I don't get satisfied and confident in sketching, so I stop there. I don't know how to make it clear or clean. Hello.
Hello.
So you brought your thing.
I did.
Say hi to the chat, Gary.
Hello. I brought it so I could plug in.
Whoa, it's big.
It's very big.
Give Peach pets.
I will.
Sunburn says, Gary, I always ask for you and now you're here. It's true. Every time they come into the chat, they're like, hi, Night. Hi, Gary. And I'm like, Gary's not here.
Gary's not coming today.
Gary's not coming today. Gary hasn't been here in a while. He's here because we were going to hang out during the week, and then we didn't get to because we were both busy. So now he's here a day early because we usually hang out on Saturdays. And Gary not here. Gary is here now. The question. Clean sketch. I mean, so when I sketch, quote unquote, I don't really sketch with the intention of line arting afterwards. There are times where I do, and usually those sketches are not nearly as clean. Clean sketching, the thing that you see me doing is honestly a product of like, I'm only gonna draw this once. I might as well get it somewhat clean the first time. And it's because I am used to the things that I'm drawing. I'm familiar with how to draw characters, so it makes it slightly easier to make more purposeful decisions in that way. But you might want to turn on the fan. It gets a little warm.
Oh, it's gonna be loud on the mic, it's fine.
That one's loud. That one isn't.
That's okay. I'm comfortable right now.
Okay. It's primarily because I'm comfortable with drawing characters, so I can make deliberate decisions. And so that kind of feeds into why my sketches are cleaner. I think for different people, sketches are a great way for them to plan out what they want to be drawing, and I think sketches are not something you should get rid of just because. But if you want to start sketching clean, the most important thing is that you have to be aware that you kind of have to problem solve on the fly. So as you're drawing, you have to sort of be envisioning like what is the next thing you're gonna draw, and be able to constantly be a couple steps ahead of yourself, even if you are making it up as you go, like I typically do. Even if you don't really have a plan, you still have to kind of be thinking ahead for what is the next decision, how do you make the most of whatever preliminary idea you might have. And then also keep in mind all the things that you would have normally planned through the sketch. But honestly, I think clean sketching just comes from practice, from getting comfortable with drawing. And also just practicing like efficiency. So knowing when to use one line when instead of 15. Pulling your lines out as opposed to kind of chicken scratching your way through them. All those things are things you should probably practice if this is something that's interesting to you. Let's see. Still waiting for the next Gary stream? That might never happen because Gary's deep in his personal game time. So next Gary stream is gonna have to be when I pull him onto my stream probably. How's your week been, Gary?
Actually, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly good, actually.
He got a bunch of Pokemon stuff.
I did get a bunch of Pokemon stuff.
You want to share with them what you got?
This week I got a Battle Styles Elite Trainer box. I don't know if that means anything to anybody.
But it basically has...
I just got a bunch of trading cards. I just got a bunch of cards finally, because...
They're booster packs for Pokemon.
Yeah, because I can't get them because everybody keeps buying them.
But he finally unboxed a bunch of them, or deep, what is it called? Opened them.
Yeah, what's that word?
What's the word? Open? He finally opened all of them. So he sent me a picture of like the mess of plastic wraps and
Because everybody keeps
foil.
buying them. I can't buy them in stores.
It's true.
Stupid.
I think it's definitely because of influencers, right? Like everyone's
Yeah,
just buying out.
People want to make a bunch of money on Pokemon cards right now.
Yeah, which is
fine. Get the bag, but
I don't know. Don't do that to like stuff that kids are gonna want to buy for themselves.
to be fair, I think it is like actually the kids doing it too, though.
An unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
Is there a workflow that professional industry favors more? So there's not really a workflow I think that is favored as a monolith. Every studio has a different style. Some studios are very photo bash heavy, so they don't really have the whole line art, flats, render thing. You go straight into painting. Some studios are very more, I guess, like traditional in that way, so especially if everything's hand drawn, you're gonna get the probably the sketch, the line art, the whatever. It depends on the style of the studio, what they are working on. That's definitely the case for stuff like animation and any like more 2D based games and stuff like that, for sure. If you're being hired to do something, it's because they want your style specifically. So you can have any range of styles. You just might be asked to do one particular style for X project. Like when I did the offline TV poster, they asked specifically, like, hey, can you do it in X style? And they gave me a link to one of a previous drawing that I did. So that I had to switch into drawing very classic line art, flats, rendering, post-processing. It's like a very straightforward process, whereas if I was just painting, I might have done like a super loose beginning sketch and then just gone straight into painting. So, you know, there's tons of different ways to do that. Hair? Yeah. For sure. I did not like drawing hair at a certain point in my life, and I figured I probably should change that. So I did a lot of, I just kind of started drawing more of it. I started kind of practicing in a similar way, like drawing fabric to drawing hair is kind of very similar. It's the same, I guess, like, idea. So as I was learning to draw fabric, I was also kind of just drawing different types of hair all the time. Learning how to kind of fold it, different hair textures, styles, how to draw different ways of tying it, of braiding it, of stuff like that. My characters beforehand had pretty typical, like, straight, flat hair. So then I started designing characters and drawing characters that had fluffier hair, that had curly hair, that did a bunch of other stuff. So as I got more comfortable kind of manipulating things in that way, I was able to kind of get more comfortable with hair in general. And so now I quite like it. I quite like drawing it. I don't think I'm all that good at depicting like real mass with hair. I think my hair is pretty flat in that way, but it's still fun to draw, so. You having a good time?
She's loving this.
She is loving it.
You missed it. She I laid down, and I brought my arm closer, and she took her paw and she grabbed my hand to put it on her head.
Peach does do that. It's a dream when Peach is like, continue petting me.
I need pets.
Specifically, what about long hair? There's a lot of different things you could be referring to. Also, what do you mean by looks weird? Do you explain your character design process? I have no idea where to start. Most I know is to like have a key concept. So yeah, when it comes to character stuff, I don't typically follow like one consistent process. I have a ton of different tools that I use that I switch out depending on what I feel like at the time, but at the core, yeah, having one idea as like kind of the hook for your character. It could be their job archetype, it could be their weapon, it could be anything that makes this character interesting and worth designing. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't design characters that are relatively mundane or normal. It's just that if you're thinking about character design from sort of a base standpoint, all characters should have something about them that is intriguing or in some way unique, or supports the story that they're in or that they're trying to tell. So, you know, whether that be this character has a very specific relic weapon that defines them in a lot of ways, or a specific power, or, you know, something like that, then, you know, you have a jumping off point. From there, I typically do a combination of kind of just like ideation and research. So that could be writing, that could be like brainstorming different ways that certain traits can manifest. So how does a certain personality trait manifest on a character? That could be in their clothes, that could be in their culture. Like, are they really kind of like faithful to X heritage or something like that? It could be in the way that they present themselves, so I could be taking notes on like specific poses or general, I guess, like behaviors that a character could exhibit. I could be taking notes on, if they're a fighter, what styles do they fight in, what are the day-to-day activities that they do, how would that change their body type. Not defining everything, just enough for me to have a jumping off point when I do get to a stage where I'm actually drawing. And research is a big thing with this too. I think research is something that people don't do often enough, one that can really help you expand your comfort zone and kind of work outside of things that you're comfortable doing all the time, so that you can actually start growing and learning new things that you can incorporate into future concepts. I think research is the best way to do that. It's the most interesting way to do that. And that could be doing actual technical research. Like if the person has a gun of a specific kind, learning how to draw guns, having references of that, or potentially like different textures, different materials. If you're sourcing from a culture that's very specific, then you need photo references for that. And then you get to the actual iteration stage, which is the designing part. And this could be in a lot of different ways. You could do silhouettes, you could do thumbnails, you could do just general sketching, and especially if it's for yourself, kind of just drawing a bunch of different ideas and poses and coming up with different silhouette ideas. It's all very open to interpretation for what works best for your character and for you in that specific project or process. And iteration typically takes the longest because you're kind of working through, okay, what are the specifics of this character? What do they look like? How do they dress? Not only are you thinking about the general shapes and silhouettes of this character, but, what are attributes that you wanted to take into consideration? What are interesting ideas that you didn't previously think about that now you want to incorporate? What is the best version of this character for this specific instance? And that can change. There could be a lot of different iterations of this character that could be cool that you can't all do because, in a way you have to be willing to give away and destroy your first idea for a specific character and not be beholden to the first thing you draw for them. And then, once that's kind of been something you've gone through and you're starting to settle, you can start doing a process of elimination. Picking out character sketches and silhouettes that feel promising, that have interesting ideas in them, that have potential, as opposed to just being like, yeah, this is a character, but is it the character I'm trying to design? I don't know. Picking out the ones that are just a little weak or kind of unpolished and don't have a lot of potential moving forward from the ones that do have potential but might just need some more work. And doing that for anything from design to hairstyles to costume to color palettes to poses to expressions, until you eventually reach a point where you have a body of work that is exploring every part of this character, and you can take a look at all of them and arrive at a place where you're like, okay, yeah, so this is, in this context, the best version of this character, given these parameters, given what I was setting out to achieve, what kind of character I wanted to design. This is the version of this character that I think is the most evocative of the original concept. That's kind of character design in a nutshell. And it's not that, I guess, complicated of a process if you think about it in very linear terms, but very rarely does it ever end up being linear. Very typically you're kind of bouncing around or going to different stages and getting to a certain point, not liking it and having to redo stuff or try to kind of doctor it a little bit. There are a lot of different ways to design characters, a lot of different techniques for designing characters, a lot of non-linear ways to get to the same place. Ultimately, the goal of design and the goal of characters is to most efficiently tell the story you're trying to tell. Because characters are hopefully vehicles for storytelling. And how seriously you take that, how deep you take that, is dependent on the character. Because yes, there are some characters that are very mundane, and that's the point of them. That's fine. It doesn't make them any less of a character than others. But you have to understand that those are the stakes, versus when you're designing a character that has a lot of world building and backstory and kind of new fashion and technology that you have to integrate into it in a more fantastical setting, in a more fictional setting. Then you have a lot of different stakes at hand that you have to kind of keep in mind. So it can be as deep, as complicated, or as simple as you want it to be. I'll hydrate now. Peach! Doesn't she look like a slug? Gary is zoned into his game. What's your favorite movie or TV show? I don't know, honestly. Honestly, I can't really say. I don't enjoy watching movies all that much, or shows. Like, I get into moods with them, but I don't. Like, whenever people are like, oh, movie night, it actually sounds incredibly boring to me. I don't know. I feel like I'd much rather just watch different types of content versus, like, movies or shows, which is why I don't tend to keep up with them. But, and it also doesn't help that I tend to watch like the same 5 things, so, and a lot of them are now kind of like iffy because they were made back in like 2010 or whatever, or 2008, but I guess the only show, if we're not talking anime, the only show that I've like actively kept watching again and again has been Criminal Minds. I always go back and watch Criminal Minds every couple of years. I know every episode by heart, but like, I don't know. It's one of those shows that I can just like leave on while I'm working and just watch kind of passively. When it comes to movies, you know, in a different world, or not different world, in a different time, if you'd asked me like a long time ago, I might have said Lord of the Rings. I'm kind of worn out because I've watched that movie so many times since. So I think I'm taking a break from it. What other movie though? What movie? I guess Spider-Verse, maybe. I tend to like animated movies more than live action ones. And I feel like I've watched Spider-Verse a lot more than any other movie I've rewatched. Esida, thank you for the tier 1 sub for 12 months. You don't recover from something like that. Watching Criminal Minds, who's your favorite character? Do you have a favorite episode? I liked Reed. Like everyone else, I liked Reed. Although I do also like Garcia, Reed, and Morgan was like my favorite little trio. And I also really liked Rossi. When Rossi came in, he was kind of like a replacement father figure, and I really liked him, even though a lot of people didn't like him very much. And I didn't mind the extra cast that they started bringing in afterwards. I thought they were okay. But yeah, Garcia and Reed are my favorite. I think my favorite episode that I always look out for is, I don't remember exactly which one this was placed in, because I usually don't care about the actual episode itself. I'm always watching it for these 2 parts. But in the beginning and end of an episode, Garcia and Reed are trying to practice for their physical for the FBI, because they, I guess, have to do it every year or they have to do it that year, and they thought they had it kind of waived, but turns out they didn't, and so they're trying to like run and exercise for it. And Reed's like dying, he can't breathe. Garcia is complaining about the fact that she has a desk job, so she's not even in the field. Like, why does she have to do the physical? So you get to see the two of them like trying their best to like be athletic in some way, and then at the end of the episode it reveals that Derek Morgan is their physical fitness instructor or whatever, or like proctor, and he puts them through a bunch of like really grueling exercises, and you have this montage of them trying to like exercise with him like yelling at them like a coach, until the very end where he reveals that he actually waived their physical fitness test the entire time. He was just messing with them. And then Reed and Garcia tackle him to the ground. I always look out for that episode because it's like my cutest bit of like kind of outside the canon of, not outside the canon of the show, but outside crime. It's like my favorite moment, I think, because it was very much like, wow, these characters have so much chemistry together and they're such like comfortable friends. I like that dynamic a lot in shows, and it's kind of a nice reprieve from probably a pretty horrifying episode because it's Criminal Minds. But yeah, that's something that I love to see every time I rewatch. Do you think there is a correct way to hold a pen when drawing? Nope. However you write is however I write is however I draw. Some people are like, oh, hold your pencil with, so your thumb, all your fingers at the top and your thumbs at the bottom or whatever. That only really works and helps when you are drawing with charcoal physically, or charcoal with pencil physically on an easel. Kind of can only do that like that. But when you're just drawing on your tablet, just draw like you write, essentially. I feel like people make too big of a fuss about holding pencils and other things in a quote-unquote artistic way. A lot for digital art, a lot of those things go out the window. Like when people are like, oh, draw with your arm or your whatever, you can't do that on a tiny tablet. Like unless you have a Cintiq that's huge, you can't really draw with your arm on a tiny tablet. It doesn't work that way. You can try to use a little bit of arm movement, but it's not really going to be as impactful as when you're drawing again on like a big physical piece of paper that's bigger than the span of your arm, or you have a giant Cintiq. I think it depends on what it's for. Like, if you think about characters like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, like a lot of like Final Fantasy, do you like, yes, of course they have story. When people look at characters, they're often iconic for a different reason. Bayonetta is iconic because she's Bayonetta. She looks like Bayonetta. Is her story impactful? Sure. I don't really know it, but I'm sure it is. But people don't necessarily like Bayonetta specifically for the story. I think people like her primarily for the aesthetics and how she looks and how impactful she is and how iconic she is. Same with Devil May Cry. Yes, there's a story in there, and yes, that can enhance your appreciation for characters, but part of the reason why people like Devil May Cry is because it's just a bombastic, like, it just goes for the kind of absurdity of the concept. They have a sword that turns into a motorcycle that turns into a chainsaw or something, I don't know. It's weird, it's stupid, and it's great. That's why people like it. Aesthetics play a huge part in how some people like certain characters. Story is what allows other people to interact with certain characters. I don't think characters, like a lot of iconic characters, are actually very good character designs, because that's not usually the point, right? Like Avatar: The Last Airbender, I don't think a lot of those characters have very good designs. The only characters I think actually have really nice looking designs are the Kyoshi warriors. I think they are actually really cool and are really like visually iconic. But if you look at the actual cast of characters, they're not that crazy. They work perfectly fine, but they're not iconic because of their designs. They're iconic because those character designs amplify the story that they're trying to tell. They amplify the character's journey, amplify the character's personal backstory, so that you connect with them on a level that makes sense with the world building, with their character arc. So it depends on the content, right? Like, if I'm looking at an animated show that is clearly not about the design of the character in a way that's beyond functional, like they have character designs that are passable, that are good, they work perfectly fine, but the story is why I like the characters, that's fine. Sometimes it's all about aesthetics. If you ever see people do character design challenges on Twitter and stuff, and they're always like taking a picture from Pinterest and like making a character design out of it, that's just about the character design. Yes, there's a story in there possibly, but it's never usually about the story that they're trying to tell. Because what you're looking at is like, oh, that nice pretty lamp became a really nice looking character. So I value different things depending on the point of the piece of media or content. I like a good story, and I am perfectly content with good aesthetics. I think very often I tend to look at aesthetics more clearly because I'm a lot more drawn to costumes as opposed to straight story. But I am not going to forgive a terrible story just because the characters were pretty or whatever. Well, I might. I am much more inclined to read a nice looking thing that has a really blessed story versus something that has a really good story but the art style is kind of hard to take in. I have been known to do that before. You might be gripping your pencil too much. You might be tightening without knowing. There is the thing is over excessive use of your wrist. I think even when you're drawing on paper, or using a tablet, there is a little bit of arm movement that you can use, especially if you zoom in really close and you get more real estate to work with. In digital, you can kind of fake it. A little harder to do with paper and pencil, but it's not impossible. There is a way to overuse your wrist, though, for sure. And if that's something that you feel like you do quite a bit and you actually get a lot of wrist pain, I would definitely recommend investing in a wrist brace for when you are not drawing and you're just kind of going about your day or about to go to sleep. A wrist brace is a good way to kind of heal your wrist overnight as you're, doing other things. Impossible to draw with, but good to kind of just chill and have it on so that your wrist is straight, it's not being moved or anything. And also make sure you stretch it and massage it as well. So my answer to this question has kind of evolved over the years. How to find your art style, I think originally, I get the reason why people ask it, because we put this huge emphasis on people's art style being the thing that's iconic about them. That's not necessarily untrue, but I think to a certain degree, art styles are not things that you should be actively trying to develop in the way that we've always been thinking about it. I think art styles are something that you grow into naturally. Not necessarily because you haven't been, thinking about it, because your tastes do change and they grow and evolve as you find new artists and stuff like that, but you tend to grow into habits that make an impact on you or have kind of a lasting effect on you. Art styles are essentially just a person's collected habits and preferences. Even if you try out different styles, even if you draw with different mediums, you always eventually end up drawing with very similar kind of practiced techniques or practiced or previously done habits. Like, people tend to recognize my work because of either the way that I draw my lines, the style in which I draw my faces, or the ways that I draw certain objects, or the way that I post things. Like, people recognize my stuff for that in ways I can't recognize my stuff for that. I feel like I don't have a style, but some people tell me that I do. I don't know what it is. It's not really for me to say, but clearly it's enough for some people to be able to recognize my art to a certain degree. And I think that's just because as I've grown up and developed like a better sense for the things that I am interested in stylistically, the type of artists that I like that have kind of influenced me in a certain way, all those things have kind of led to me making choices and decisions as I draw that are consistent, that come back over and over again. And you don't really know what's going to be consistent until you've drawn for a really long time and have developed a certain taste. There are some artists that you'll look at that are very, like, you only really like them for about a year or so before you are like, I don't know why I ever liked this artist. Some artists you like for your whole life. So when you're looking to quote-unquote find an art style, I feel like people are just trying to find a way to kind of quickly figure out what that destined look is for them so that they can quickly get to that point and start developing that iconic look faster. I don't think that is going to last forever. Like, typically when people do that, they come up with a style, they're like, I feel like I finally found it. And then like a couple months later, it's gonna change, inevitably shift, and it could even shift in drastic ways depending on, you know, what you're into. Over the course of a single year back in 2013, my style went from very anime to semi-realistic painting because I hated doing line art. And then in the course of a single year, I went from semi-realistic painting to doing line art again because I was tired of painting. Both times I switched, I was like, oh, I finally found my look, my style, my thing. I didn't. I just was experimenting with a new look, and I was hesitant to experiment because I felt like if I did, I'd be going against the style that I had decided for myself. It's stupid. Like, the idea of limiting yourself because you feel like you have a style that you want to stick with, or this is a style you want to have, and then you don't let yourself grow from that. It's an arbitrary kind of pressure born from this weird conception we have that style is actually super important and that you have to find it in order to progress as an artist. I really don't agree with that notion, and I think that while it's fine to kind of be looking at artists that you like and figuring out, you know, I do like this style, I wonder why, and I feel like certain artists have had a bigger impact on me, I wonder why that is, and what are my specific tastes, because it helps you understand what you like about art, and that's a good thing to know because it helps you make better decisions in the future. But when it comes to actually finding a style, I think the words themselves complicate and obfuscate the real purpose behind having a style anyway. People get so obsessed with finding a style that they kind of forget to sort of just allow themselves to draw and experiment with different things and don't focus on style as much as just trying out different ways to draw. It's a weird rabbit hole I feel like I find people going in every single time, because for some reason we've developed some weird preconceived notion that it's something you have to find, something that you have to work towards. Your stuff is gonna change and it's gonna look different throughout the course of your life. So you might as well just enjoy it while you're still learning and experiment with different things. And try out different techniques and figure out what you like, what feels comfortable for you, what works, what doesn't, what feels kind of a pain to integrate into what you're doing, what feels like a step forward, what feels like a step back. See how all those things combine. Keep drawing, keep applying those things, and eventually at some point you'll realize, hey, in the past couple weeks, I've kind of been doing this thing habitually, a lot, frequently. And so it's just gonna, like, years from then, integrate itself somewhere into your habits, to the point where you don't even think about the fact that you're making an active choice to draw X thing this way, or use X technique for a thing. It's just going to be a natural part of your drawing process. Which is a long-winded way of saying that I think art styles are stupid. Any examples you can think of for shows whose design you like but you don't care for the story? It's probably an anime. There are times where I feel like Sword Art Online actually has some pretty interesting designs. Same with Fate. But I could give less of a shit about what those stories are about. There's so many animes where I'm just like, wow, that looks so boring, but that character design is kind of sick. And I just never get into them, ever. Premiere is like, it's like a hallucinatory drug, I feel like. Not Premiere, Trigger. Trigger is like a hallucinatory drug. Like, you get a shot of it, and it's like an instant kick to your senses, because as usual, all of their films, especially recently, this was especially apparent in their Visions episodes, but like, they're like visual spectacles, sure. Eye candy, for sure. Story-wise, it's never gonna be that good. Like, they are good at writing moments. Whether it comes to writing huge story arcs that all tie together nicely, not usually the best. They're not terrible at it. Sometimes they have gold, but they don't necessarily aim for that, because it's always building up to the big, super climactic moment of either a super emotional scene, or a really big fight scene, you know? Like, their Visions episode, what is it, The Ninth Jedi, is literally just a fight scene. And in fact, Imaishi saw one of the newer Star Wars movies and was like, you know what, I want to do that scene but better. So that was like all that episode was. But Trigger is like, it's like instant eye candy, instant like adrenaline. But if you're a little too aware in that moment, sometimes it's just a bad time. Like, if you're a little too aware of the fact that, like, the story kind of sucks and the fight scene is all that's really cool about it, and that there's not really a lot of substance outside of that, sometimes when you're watching Trigger stuff, it's just like, Man, I wish Trigger had like more of like more pieces of a lot of other like fields. If they got like a writer that was really good at building things, or you know, had scenes that weren't just gags but like actual kind of progressions of character. And what if their spectacle, like, I feel like Promare was kind of a weird first step into that kind of corner where you watched it because it was stupid and it was fun and it was like low commitment. And I liked it, but that's because it's a low commitment thing and I watch it because it's low commitment. I do wish Trigger would build beyond that. But maybe that's just not what Trigger's for. How much time do you think the average artist take to learn anatomy to the point where they don't look unnatural? Not perfect is fine. Well, it depends. On I guess like functional anatomy. I don't think you can quantify it in time. I think you can only really quantify it by like what is important to that person. Some people will never know anatomy in terms of names, functions, purpose, all that stuff. They kind of know it by basic shapes and silhouettes, and that's fine. Some artists, like me, like a lot of other kind of anatomical people, educators, Proco, other people on YouTube, like, they tend to like learning actual names and functions and structures because it helps when you're trying to communicate, and it helps when you're trying to dissect, like, oh, what is this model or this real life reference doing? You have the kind of, I guess, like, vocabulary to talk about it in that way, and it helps us understand these concepts better. So in terms of just raw, like, knowing names, knowing structures, remembering, like, what do they do, what do they look like, what are the insertion points, where is the biggest point on the muscle, where are the high points if you combine it all together, how do these things interweave with each other, how do, all these things could take anywhere from a solid hardcore year to learn all those things, or you could be like me and have been kind of orbiting this study for close to like 12-ish years at this point of rehashing and reinforcing and kind of trying to remind myself of all of these things. And I'm still learning stuff. Like, I never used to really pay attention to like arm muscles, but for my class I had to really learn kind of like the muscles in the lower arm, and I never had to do that before, and I even got it wrong still, and I had to revise it, but that's fine because I now have a much better understanding of how all those things work, and it adds to my overall ability to kind of understand like what's happening when I look at photo reference of someone's arm. So how would you quantify that in the grand scheme of my life? At what point do I feel like I've learned anatomy well enough? I'd say after like 10 or so years, I felt like I could use anatomy in a way that was functional, that was workable. Maybe I didn't know names and stuff, but I could understand like what things were doing. If someone was doing a certain pose or whatever, like, I could understand it. For some people, that could literally just be a year of their life. So I don't know. It really depends on who you are. So how exactly do you use big, medium, and small shapes in your character designs? Does it only help with silhouette? No. Character designs are fundamentally always about the distribution of shapes and how you break up those shapes. Big, medium, small shapes are found in the details of a character design, not only just the, I guess, like, the parts of it that, you know, like the silhouette only. I think once you actually see it done well for the first time, you recognize why it's important. Let me see, do I have an example that I can show? Where do I have... So, let me... I don't really have any of my actual things that I used for this, I don't think. But... let's see. So, for example, this character... when it came to dividing up... Oh. Hello. I want white. When it came to dividing up big, medium, and small shapes, there were a couple of things that I had to keep in mind. One, her legs were kind of the most important part about her. So, it had the biggest shape on... like, this is the big shape overall, right? Is this big kind of rounded overall silhouette. But then in between that, I would break it up into smaller pieces. So not only was it going to be this big piece, but it also had smaller pieces on top of it. And then even smaller than that were these little tinier details. So big, medium, small shapes are found in everything. If you look at a character design that you really like, and it's not just, you know, consistent all around, you'll notice that there are areas where there's a high concentration of detail. Examples are, you know, like places like this, where there's a concentration of detail, right? And then there's like no detail at all here. Concentration of detail right here. And then not a ton of detail near the legs. And then concentration of detail right here. And then I only divided this bigger shape with a smaller concentration of detail right here. So, you know, that's also a form of the idea of big, medium, small. It's like separating out these pieces. So, like, I have a concentration of detail that's over here, but it's relatively small compared to this bigger shape in the middle. And then this medium shape here. And then these would be smaller shapes. So big, medium, small is in everything, right? It's a way that you can divide up your character to make spaces look interesting. You can use it to increase value in certain areas, increase focal points in certain areas. This can happen overall in a character. This can happen on a smaller level in a character, right? Like if I were to zoom in on one specific place, you could say this whole shape is kind of the big shape, the medium shapes, and then the small shapes. So then you have this like super tight macro environment right here. And then if you look at it in the scope of the bigger arm, you know, this is replicated over here. But then at the same time, if you look at it in the context of the arm itself, you also have, here's the big shape for the arm in particular, and then these are the medium shapes, and then again these are the small shapes. And then you can like continue to extend that to the whole body. So they're in everything. Big, medium, small shapes are like a core fundamental aspect of character design. Something that I think people don't really utilize often enough. So if you're ever looking at a character and you feel like, hey, they look kind of boring, it might be because you don't have a good proportion of these shapes. It could be that you have too many big shapes and not enough medium shapes to kind of slice that up. And maybe not enough sprinkling of small shapes to make small areas interesting. If it looks too busy and there's too much stuff happening, that's probably because you have way too many small shapes and not enough big or medium areas to kind of balance it out. If it feels kind of all over the place, it could be that you have too many medium shapes. You need to delete some details. You gotta focus specific small areas with a lot of, noise and a lot of busyness in contrast to open areas that don't have nearly as much detail. That's kind of where that applies. It's not just silhouettes, although silhouettes are an easy way to kind of quickly do this kind of stuff on the fly. A lot of this becomes a lot more important when you get to this sort of like detailing phase of figuring out what each of these things, how each of these things kind of correlate with each other. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you graduate to animal anatomy? If you want to. You can. I think some people do. But I don't really have like an expressed interest in drawing animals. So I don't know if I will ever do that on my own willingly. But I might if I get bored. And I feel like I should learn it. Which I should. I should really learn it, but I don't want to. You still practice gesture drawing? What do you focus on when you do gesture? I should practice gesture drawing more. I honestly haven't been. And you should practice gesture drawing a lot. I feel like people that tend to do super clean stuff like I do always forget to kind of go back to their roots and practice doing looser drawings and stuff, which is something I've been trying to do in my free time. And people that, tend to only do gestures don't really practice drawing with intent, so all their stuff is really loose, and there's never really a point where they're actually like slowing down and drawing things carefully and deliberating. So there's always plus and pros and cons for both sides. But when I do gesture stuff, I try to practice being loose, and I try to practice having like a different approach to drawing. It always ends up looking real nasty, but it's a good thing to practice. Do I still have my beginning attempts at character design? For sure. Let me see if I can bring it up. Wow, a lot of these links are broken. That's sad. Meh. God, old art is such a hoot to look at. So, what is this from? I don't actually know. 2008? I actually redrew this character not too long ago. I think in like 2016? Was it 2016? 2015? 2014? I forget. I did redraw this character at some time. But this was like a character design I did in 2008, I think. I don't know, I actually think it's a terrible design. Like, I think it works. It's kind of like the staff is a little weird, and I don't know what's happening with her hair. But I don't think this is a bad one, actually. I think it's perfectly fine. Could use some more, like, focus, like a thematic focus, but other than that, like, it's whatever. But yeah. What's your favorite animal based on looks? I like tigers. How are you feeling right now? Okay. I'll probably end it at like 10. I'm not using an MSI laptop right now. I'm using my company's god tier rendering work machine. Was Harangi ever used for any official project, or was it like a pro? Oh, no. She was a college assignment. So she was made for like a specific thing, but it was like never in any official capacity, so I did it, I put it in my portfolio, and then I didn't really develop any further. I might finish it. I do really like the idea I had for that project. It was just at a time when I wasn't really comfortable pushing my boundaries, and so I felt like I kind of wasted a lot of the time that I spent on that project making art that I wasn't really happy with. Yes, Peach. Yes, Peach. How are you, Miss Peach? Your nose is all wet. You sniffling? Yeah. Oh, thank you for licks. Thank you for the licks. So I do want to try it again. For sure. But, you know. How do you feel about so many social media artists and like industry? How do you feel about how so many social media artists and like industry artists know you, like they recognize your work a lot? It's very flattering, for sure. I try not to think about it though. I'm trying to spend less time thinking about other artists and other people. It's been doing wonders for me, actually. I really recommend it. Like the less time you spend thinking about how other people factor into your art journey, it honestly kind of liberates you from like a lot of the pressures that we've kind of invented about social media. Because I don't think inherently social media is a harmful place. I think we all as a collective have kind of created a space that is hostile for all of us, because that's just like human nature. When you put us all together, it's impossible for so many different types of people to kind of coalesce and also still remember to put boundaries up. And honestly, spending less time thinking about other artists and spending less time looking at other artists has like helped me sort of focus on things that I feel like haven't really had the time to think about, like my own interests and my own like likes and dislikes. I don't know, I can spend my time thinking about like how do I want to maximize the work that I make in my own life versus being concerned that X drawing doesn't really match the current like I guess vibe that I feel like people who follow me are into. Like the more I thought about it, the more absurd it became, the idea that I work so hard to make, I like learn to draw and I work on my craft and I try so hard to make good pieces, also I can post it online to get like a couple likes and then I just go and do it all over again. Like, I'm not going to remember that piece 10 years from now. I'm not going to remember it a week from now. But this like constant return and deliver and then go back to the drawing board and go make a new piece and then return and deliver. It's like, at what point did I start feeling like I had to do that for other people? At what point did me getting better at art was just so that I could share it online? Like, it's so antithetical to what I started doing, why I started doing social media, why I started sharing my stuff. It was never for other people, but somehow I transformed that space into that. And I don't know when I did it, but I did it, and I kind of enforced it. And now, the less time I actually spend sharing my art, the more I feel like I'm able to kind of just, like, make decisions based on my own thoughts, if that makes any sense. So, it's really nice to hear when that people haven't forgotten me, I guess, because I feel like I'm not very active anymore. But, in all honesty, like, it's cool, but I don't know. I don't want to think about it ever. I don't want to be concerned about other artists anymore and like what they want to achieve and their dreams when they're doing whatever they want to do, because however people want to spend their time online is totally up to them. It's their whole prerogative, whatever they want to do. But my life has definitely benefited from like just disconnecting from people in that way. I feel like I could be totally wrong. In like a year, I could have a totally different perspective on this. But as I am right now, I feel like I've gained a lot of personal autonomy back from not thinking about other people, if that makes any sense. I don't know very much about computers either, so I don't know if I can help you. Hey, Potato. And again, like, I think this is just because I've been on social media for so long that to me it has like a totally different context that I think about it in. Like, I can't look at like social media apps like Instagram and Twitter as not instances of like childhood trauma. Like, they hold the same space in my heart because those apps have in a way raised me. I've grown up on them to some extent, and I've had a lot of experiences on them that I would consider as like extremely impactful on my growth as a human being. But to even look at them and think about them in any capacity is like re-inviting. It's like when you leave home for a while and you come back and you go into your room that you've had. It's like that. It's like where all the memories of a specific place come flooding back in, and it doesn't always feel great if you didn't have a great experience there. Having to relive high school and the feeling of what it felt like to kind of lose my sense of self over the course of my high school years and kind of into college, and then learning to regain that by not being a part of those spaces anymore. As much as I appreciate the friends I made on those apps and stuff, being able to like actually hear myself and talk to myself about what's good for me, I don't think I could have had that conversation if I hadn't taken like an extended break from those spaces. And even now I still feel like old habits creeping in. Sometimes when I'm drawing something, I'll think about like Like, oh, I wonder if this would perform well. And I'm like, why am I thinking about that? Like, no one's here. Why am I thinking about how much other people are gonna like this? It's a weird way to consider your own work in the context of other people. And I wasn't able to make that a boundary for myself when I was younger. So I'm making it now, I guess. Plan on doing traditional sketching streams in the future. As I don't know. I haven't really been drawing traditionally in a really long time. So I don't know how, like, much I want to do that. I used to be really interested in the idea, but now the more I think about it, if, like, traditional art is kind of one of the few things that I've kept pretty private when it comes to sharing myself drawing traditionally. And I kind of like to keep it that way. Digital art, I've been streaming for so long, so at this point, it's like a very specific, like, type of art that I make. But when it comes to traditional stuff, like, I've never really shared videos of me drawing traditionally, so it definitely feels different. It is complicated too, yeah. I don't really have a good setup to stream anything traditional. Plus, I draw weird in that way. Like, when I draw in a traditional setting, I get really close to the paper, and, like, it's really hard for me to draw far away and also flat. I always tilt it or angle it, so I think ultimately it would just kind of end up being a nightmare. Bye, Luna! You don't really need that many. Depends on what you want to paint or draw, I guess. Like, I don't really use stamps. Like, people sometimes make, like, tree stamps and stuff. I typically don't do those. I draw everything by hand if I can, because people can usually tell when a stamp is a stamp. But, like, you can look into, like, leaf type brushes or ones that create textures and stuff like that. Painting brushes can be anything that has pen pressure, opacity, a ton of those. You honestly just kind of have to try them. Like, I have a ton of brushes, but that's because I bought and downloaded all of these just to test them. I don't use most of them. Like, I pretty much only stick with, like, 1 or 2 sketch brushes, maybe 3 or 4 of my basic painting brushes, and then, like, 1 texture brush. Like, that's usually all I use for anything. But I like trying new brushes out, and I like giving them a shot and, seeing what kind of things I can make with them, because the brush does sometimes make it a different experience to draw with. And sometimes make or break your experience drawing. Wow, I haven't drawn feet in a while, and I don't particularly know if I remember how. Love you too, Sunburns. Do you have any advice getting through courses? Sometimes the lectures are boring, or just relearning stuff you already know. I don't know. Like, if you feel like you kind of already know the content, like, it's good to kind of keep an ear out to see if they explain stuff in different ways. But usually if a lecture I feel like is pretty self-explanatory, I'll just do whatever I'm doing on the side. Like, I'll just be drawing, working on my own stuff. Like, I always think there's something to learn from everyone, even if it's just affirmation of the information you already know. It's like, okay, yeah, then how I was thinking about this is actually pretty accurate or helpful or in line with what X person thinks. And the next time you'll meet a teacher who completely blows that out of the water. You'll never know when you are in situations where the teacher is actually going to be sharing, like, a piece of information that either revolutionizes how you think about a concept or just affirms or completely, like, breaks your understanding. Which is why I always recommend just kind of, if you can, paying attention to them, but it's not like the end of the world if you're like, well, I feel like I know this stuff, so I'm just gonna draw my OC or something while they're talking. I don't know. I never took class too seriously, I guess, in that way. Let's see. a favorite canvas size? 11 by 17 at 300 dpi. Pencil and pen, probably. My favorite free brushes are probably the ones I made myself. This is one that I use for painting pretty much all the time. It's just a flattened, like, circle, and it has a little bit of spacing, pen pressure, opacity, scatter? I feel like I've never seen it use scatter. Transfer, opacity, jitter, size jitter, flow. That's probably my favorite one. This one, it's like half a hard edge, half a soft edge. Just make that shape, I guess, and then string it together and have it follow in a certain direction, and you have that. Lately I've been really into, where is it? This one, where it's just like a weird triangle texture, but it's a pretty nice shape to paint with. I've been liking that too. Got all of those for free. Or I made them myself after seeing someone else use it, so I've been using a lot of these like specific pencil brushes. I've been experimenting with a couple different ones, and I have different some days where I prefer one over the other. Tips for rendering digital paintings, intricate details like engravings. I don't really know how to answer that because it is like kind of just painting, but choosing how you change the kind of technique, I guess, based on how shiny, glossy, or matte it is. But it follows the same basic rules of like lighting, ambient lighting. So I don't really know how to answer the question. I'd say they're probably be better if you looked at looking at material read studies. If you're struggling with drawing specific materials, doing some of those based off of photos might help you kind of gain a better understanding of like how to render certain things. But I don't know if I understand the question. Was there any moment you can remember recently where you learned or figured something out that was like huge or revolutionary to some aspect of art for you? I think in college, one of my teachers said something where it was like, master painters know how to paint within degrees of subtlety. Like, they know how to paint not within huge, not only with like huge portions of high contrasting tones and colors and values, but they also know how to paint in the subtle details where you don't need to put in a ton of like contrast to communicate form. And I think the idea that with painting sometimes it is about the subtle shifts in saturation, in color temperature, in value, those small jumps which add a lot more, I think, to a painting than just like, here's my light and here's my shadow and here's everything in between. I feel like I never had a good grasp on treating things with subtlety in that way, and I feel like him saying that kind of opened my eyes to what is a pretty rudimentary concept for painters, I feel like. But it was pretty cool. The idea of painting with subtlety was a pretty neat concept. I didn't. Honestly, that fight kind of made me mad, so I just left afterwards once I was done with it. But I do want to go back and get a photo. But it was so cool. It was so cool. I loved that moment. I messaged like 3 different people about it when it happened. I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and actually get a photo op because I do want to do that. Do you just do it? How do you do it in Explorer mode? Do you have to finish the quest line? Oh. Let your phone die. Like, drain the battery and let it die. And then after a couple days, you'll forget that you even have one. I don't know, honestly, like, I haven't been looking at my phone very much. Which has been really nice. I kind of only look at it when I'm not at home, but outside of it, like, I never need it. I think that's primarily because I haven't been going on any social media lately. Oh, or the nuclear option, delete all your social media apps. Anything that you use your phone for, delete it. Yes. Get up and stretch. Oh, get up and stretch. With the people who can use the emotes, how many pets should I give Peach? You should tell me with the paw emotes. I'll get up and stretch and go pet Peach. So how many? I see 3 pets. 4 pets. Seven? Is that 7 pets? I'll also hydrate. We're just gonna go up from here. I need to come up with a reason to use the paw emotes. Speaking of which, once we unlock more sub points and I can get more emotes, I'm absolutely gonna add different types of paws, different types of cats. Peach, you have so many pets lined up. Hi, Peach. Oh!
Oh.
Hey.
You're bothering me.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Jesus, Peach.
No.
So you really painted this pillow, huh?
She has.
She's really painted this side too, huh?
She has. Peach, we tempted to pet Peach, but she saw me go for her and she ran. Peach petting stream. What kind of cat do I have? I have an American short hair tabby gray color? In the color gray. In the flavor gray. She... yeah, so she's just a very typical cat, but she's got a round face and an extremely long body. I don't know where she got it from. Sullivan, thank you for the tier 1 sub for 12 months. Do you ever get overwhelmed with designing more than is needed? Like if your assignment requires you to design 20 boxes, but you know the first are the best, what do you do? So that's kind of something, a habit you have to sort of stamp out. It's recognizing that even if you like the first few, you have to push yourself to think of ways that you kind of didn't default consider, because typically the first ones you think of are the ones that are either the most obvious to you, the ones that suit your sensibilities the best. So that's usually where research and ideation come to help change up the game. That's where you fall back on research that you've done to look at different ways of interpreting the same ideas. That's when you use any of the brainstorm kind of spitballing concepts you came up with to kind of farm for new ideas. That's where you start kit hashing different ideas. So taking some of the sketches you did and saying like, okay, well, what if instead of it being top heavy, what if it was bottom heavy? What if I went for a different proportion? Instead of big weapon to small character, it was big character to small weapon. You know, what about different proportions, different ages, different body types within a certain range of character defining, or characteristics that define your character? What if I try different types of fabrics or different subtle changes in the clothing style, even if in line with whatever your ask was originally. It's kind of expanding your visual library so you can see when you haven't fully explored all the potential ideas. If you're always going to be content with the first 5 or first design you ever do, you'll never really practice the skill of kind of looking for ways to break the habits you've created. So that's kind of why for me research is huge, because research is the main way that I break out of those preconceived kind of habits. I draw the first thing that comes to mind, and then I look at my research and I look for small ways that I can bring different motifs, different ideas into my designs and riff off of those. And then also, you can do lateral exploration, where you take an idea and you do not tiny, but small changes to it. Like, instead of this weapon, I'll make it a different type, or maybe instead of X hairstyle and like Y face, I use a different one, and I try out a different silhouette that's slightly similar but not necessarily the same. And you make those explorations and you pull them out, and then you look at, in the end, like, which ones are still the ones that stand out the most. If it's still the first ones you did, then okay, sure. But you kind of always want to act as if there is more to explore, and that if you feel like there isn't, like, only make that call once you've exhausted everything, from like stepping away and taking another look at it, looking at other pieces of media that might have tackled the same idea, maybe looking at different sources of inspiration that might feel unrelated to the core concept, but if you actually examine it, might actually have some pretty interesting analogs for you to look at. It's like how Star Wars is like a samurai-esque movie, or how Star Wars is a Western. When you were a kid, if you didn't grow up with cowboy movies, you don't necessarily think of Star Wars as a Western, but it is a Western. So with the idea that it has like this whole other kind of cultural backbone to it, how do you then revolutionize some of the ideas that Star Wars had at its conception? Well, what the prequels did was Ian McCaig went and injected high haute couture fashion into it. If we're talking about high society, no longer talking about like scrappy boys in the middle of on a planet in the middle of nowhere, talking about high society, high developed alien society, what would they look like? Well, in a place where technology has kind of progressed to a point of kind of like an over-reliance on tech, you can make anything possible for the upper echelon and the wealthy. So Star Wars then took on a new sort of analog, which is avant-garde fashion. And that became kind of the look of a lot of the prequel movies, which I think, from a visual standpoint, is some of the strongest stuff that has ever come out of Star Wars. That was a new take on what is kind of the preconceived starting point for a lot of Star Wars content, which is like, have like the cloaks and the fabrics and the textiles for sure, have like the random belt and the sword or the lightsaber hilt or whatever. But Ian McCaig took that a step further. He gave it some new identity. And now Star Wars can be a little bit weirder. It could be a little bit more fashion oriented, and it wouldn't be that crazy of a concept. We do talk about Peach like a slug. How do you know what to iterate on? So the building blocks of a character from a technical standpoint are proportion, silhouette, and like the, I guess, like shape and form. So you can think about this in as granularly as you would like to. You can think about this literally in terms of what are the actual objects they carry on them, or you can think about it in terms of shape. What are the core silhouettes that I'm communicating through this design? What are the core shapes and forms and like proportions that I'm communicating through this design? Pros and cons to both methods. But if you are looking to iterate on something, picking one of those questions to ask of like, okay, so here is a given proportion. Here is a given ensemble in terms of outfits. Here is a given hook. This character has a big weapon, that's their hook. How do I iterate on this hook, either by giving the weapon a different silhouette with functionally the same purpose? How do I maybe make it a bit more impactful? Do I change the pose a little bit and add a little bit more detail in places I couldn't, where like maybe the weapon was obstructing the neck area, so now I can put a big collar, I can put like a scarf. How do I add leading lines to areas of focus? How do I create areas of focus within this thumbnail or this drawing or the silhouette? How do I add, lines which create interest? How do I break shapes down into big, medium, and small shapes? How can I make this proportion a new take on the same concept? If I have a ton of sketches that kind of all correlate with a very similar proportional breakdown, for example, one that I use a lot is big coat, skinny legs, right? Well, it's a different iteration on that. That wouldn't detract from what the character is supposed to have or be about. And the only way you can really answer those questions is by testing them. Essentially what concepting is trying to find not all, but you're trying to find a ton of different solutions to answer the same core problem. Which is why I never really recommend people start character designs with a lot of things already figured out. You want a core piece of your character figured out. If they have a core hook to them, like they have, like, again, the big weapon idea. If they have a big weapon, sure, cool, keep it. But if your whole thing is like, oh, well, he has this backstory, and he's got all these relationships with characters, and he's soft and effeminate, and he's got, like, a dark side, but he has, like, so, there's, like, a bunch of different details about this character that are kind of not about why this character is interesting to look at, what makes their design compelling. How much of their story can you tell through their design? Having one basic idea that holds your character together, that holds the idea together, is good. Having an idea that you're too afraid to let go restricts you from making the more wild, or trying out the more wild ideas, because you're suddenly afraid to get too far away from this original idea for this character. If you're designing a character and in your head you already know what you want, you are kind of not actually designing the character in, I think, the way that you want to be. You can do those for your own characters or for your characters that are pretty mundane and stereotypical and whatever. Like, they're straightforward. It's fine if you kind of just make it up and it works. But when it comes to designing characters that are a little bit more ambiguous and are a little bit more abstract, confining yourself to your first conceived notions of what that character could be, the first conceived solutions to the specific problems your character creates or has kind of put on the table, the sooner you let yourself decide on those things, the less willing you will be to expand on those ideas and bring kind of new I guess, concepts to the existing, or to the table. You'll be unwilling to deviate from it, because that's kind of just how we tend to act. If we have an idea that we've subconsciously settled on, we're automatically reluctant because we want to do that idea, not try and invent new ones, which will suffer as a result of it. So when it comes to what to iterate on, you take the core aspects of what your character design is about. You look at it and you're like, okay, so I've invented this one solution to this character. How many more ways can this same problem be solved? Like, if you look at the basic aspects of, like, Beauty and the Beast, for example, like, people tend to gravitate towards what they've always associated the Beast with, which is often the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast. But what is the Beast really? Just a manifestation of sin, of anger, of someone else's interpretation of sin, right? That's the essence of the Beast and Beauty and the Beast. And this is a punishment, and the punishment is for a vain, beautiful man to be forced to look his sin in the face for the rest of his life, until he can overcome that and find absolution in a different way. Which sounds very religious. It's not. Essentially, he's just ugly, right? But how many different ways can you solve that problem? Someone who has to face that mistake and that punishment doesn't necessarily mean they have to look like a werewolf. But a lot of people stick with that visual iconography because that's a lot of how people associate the Beast with now, is this kind of werewolfy type character. Who says he even has to have fur? At the core of this character is not the fact that he looks like a wolf or he has, claws or whatever. It's that he's meant to be incredibly intimidating. He's meant to look he's meant to look like a threat, like death, like danger. And that's meant to drive anyone away who could potentially help him if he is not able to kind of put himself out there and make good on his part by changing the way that he interacts with people, which he struggles to do until he finds a girl, and that story is all sorts of problematic, but regardless. When you're designing a character, that's essentially what you're trying to do. You're breaking down a character to its base parts. So it's not that you're tied to the idea that, like, oh, this character has to be a 5'3" girl with red hair and blah, blah, blah. It's like, who is this character supposed to be? We can work with that. We can retrofit certain details back into it. But we're looking at it from an abstract point of view. You iterate on those basic ideas. There's so many different ways that you can work with a beast born of sin versus cute anime girl with a big gun that has tech wear on her. Those things have two different spectrums of potential and possibilities, right? And I urge you to always be framing your projects and your work in a way that allows you to have a little bit more agency in that sense. Because otherwise you're going to be stuck trying to iterate on a concept that doesn't have much left to iterate on. Unless you take wild, different stabs at the same concept, which, if it's your own thing, is fine. But when you're working on a thing with a client, sometimes that gets sticky. So, as often as you can kind of make the core of your character open-ended and a little bit more vague, the easier it will be to train yourself to find ways to iterate on a concept once you feel like you've exhausted it already. I feel like I've been talking for like an hour. Anyways. No, this is someone's character. I'll probably finish this headshot and then call it. And I can finish the rest of the commissions later on. Some other time. Yeah, at this point, like, I speak, and then I hope at some point in that speech someone found something like helpful in it, because I'm still learning to kind of plan ahead for when I'm talking. I'm trying to say stuff like and like less, so I'm trying to train myself to think more before I speak. It's not going so well. I still say a lot, but yeah, so I don't know, hopefully you found something helpful in there. Trying to speak with more authority, I guess. What advice would you give to someone who is struggling to find happiness? I think conversations like that have to happen in private, and they have to happen alone. I found, and this kind of goes back to the previous conversation I had about like kind of not involving other people in my journey anymore, I guess. I struggled to find happiness when I allowed my notions of happiness to be defined by other people. People's ideas of success, people's ideas of what's a life well lived, what's time well spent. All those things that I see or hear or I'm constantly like kind of inundated by. People say them with good intentions, but ultimately it was something I had to find the answer to on my own in a way that, you know, at the end of the day, this is my life that I'm living. I want to have lived this life feeling like, if anything else, if at the very least, the one thing I could be happy about is that I did my best to live up to my standards. Or at least I lived it in a way that was authentic to my idea of what success and happiness means to me. And art is such an integral part to that. So when it started being a question of like, how do I define success with my art, and how do I define the future of my art for me? Are you okay?
I was just, I had to spam a button.
I hear I'm having this emotional talk, and then I just hear a sudden influx of button mashing from behind me. Where do you find Bayonetta?
I am.
Nice. Peach, why are you behind my chair? But yeah, so that kind of goes back to my previous topic, where I realized that when it came to my art, at the very least, because fuck if I know how to be happy in my just normal life, but when it came to my art, at least, it was a lot easier for me to have those conversations with myself when I didn't have to worry about including other people and their ideas of success in that same conversation. Because, you know, when you're in school, people tell you that it's all about getting that job, right? School's all about getting you the job. A job is not how I define my happiness, nor how I define success. I don't find work to be fulfilling in a way that a lot of people might originally think of it as, because, you know, they join the industry because they like playing video games, or they watched movies and they want to help make them, or they want to work with a specific person or studio, and to them that is what success means. But that's not how I have ever viewed success. I've never felt a need to work with someone. I've never felt interested in the idea of working at a studio, working on a project. I've never loved anything in that way. The only thing that I really did, I think, love more than anything else was kind of the freedom to use drawing as both an activity that I loved to do, as well as an avenue for kind of storytelling and expression in a way that only made sense to me, right? If I can faithfully make art that I am interested in, that I like, that I think is fun or cool, or like a step forward for myself, that to me is a lot closer to the meaning of success in my eyes, and therefore a lot closer to being an avenue for happiness and an avenue for creating happiness and finding it, than having a good job, working on a cool project. And it wasn't until I could kind of decide that for myself, it wasn't until I could avoid hearing and looking and watching other people talk about what's cool about art and their ideas about what makes it interesting, that I could actually be honest with myself and realize that I don't really benefit from listening to other people's ideas about why this job is cool, or what is good about this job. I have my own reasons for being an artist. I have my own reasons for making art. And I don't have to qualify that by anyone else's standards. But I could only really decide that once I stopped kind of accepting other people's opinions on the matter. And it was only then did I even get to bridge that conversation about finding happiness, achieving happiness through my art. Because, in my opinion, to really be truly happy, you can't get or gain happiness from other people. Like, and some people might argue, like, oh, well, my family's my source of happiness. My partner is my source of happiness. My pet is my source of happiness. I get it, right? Those are completely valid ways to add to your happiness. But I feel like to find self-fulfillment, you have to be able to find that through things that you can do on your own. What that is for people is all up in the air, right? But I couldn't be satisfied with being I couldn't be satisfied with the idea that self-fulfillment would be found when I satisfied someone else's idea of success. And so, for me now, I don't know necessarily if I've cracked the code about it, because I'm still pretty sad most of the time. But in a way, I think when it comes to specifically art, I'm a lot more honest with it than I've ever been in my life. and I understand it more than I've ever had in my life. And I think it's because I've started to recognize what are actually beneficial spaces for me to be engaging with it. Like spaces that I can create that make it feel more authentic, that make it easier for me to have honest conversations about my art with myself. And what I've discovered is that those spaces are when I'm alone and I'm not looking at other people's art and I'm only focused on my life, my forward trajectory. I'm not talking to anyone else. I'm not sharing any of this information with other people. I'm not focused on helping other people. I'm not focused on getting help from other people. It's finding it out for myself, figuring out this information, and building on, asking new questions and building on those answers and figuring out ways that I can increase my own personal interest in the work that I do. Because drawing means more to me than anything else. It's hard to describe why or how or in what capacity, but I know that it's something I want to do long after anyone needs my art. Long after I need to, use my art and sell my art as a kind of commodity. So I had to figure out ways to, figure out how I can enable that process. That came from personal, honest conversations with myself about what I wanted out of life. What I wanted at the end of my time being a professional, being an artist, doing all that stuff. I don't have all the answers, but I can say for certain that it's the first time, I think, that I've really felt like I am so much more genuine with the work that I do for myself than I have been in a really long time. That's not to say the work that I do, I'm not satisfied necessarily with the work I do for other people. I'm not necessarily satisfied 100% with the work that I make all the time. But when I'm alone and I'm making art for myself, I'm like, this is how it was always meant to be, I think. I'm closer to that than I've ever been. And I think that makes me one step closer to finding what will inevitably be self-fulfillment through my art at some point in my life. Anyways. Is Peach a cat? Peach is my cat, yes. I don't know, I've been thinking about this concept of like, a lot of people use the internet to kind of escape from reality. But when you spend so much time on the internet becomes your reality. Instagram and Twitter were my reality for the longest time because I wanted so badly to kind of escape my actual day-to-day life with the people that were around me. But now that I've lived on that part of the world, like that part of reality for so long, that became my everyday. And then suddenly I wanted to escape that too. I couldn't do that if I hadn't put in the time and effort to cultivate my life outside of the internet into something that made me feel happy to return to once I was done kind of interacting and being a part of those spaces. Every time I post now, I make an effort to like close all of my tabs and not interact with anything for the first, like, bit of time. Like, I try to kind of disconnect myself from the moment that I post something to when I start, like, reading and responding to stuff. Time away to, like, just kind of accept, like, okay, so I did that. Let's not forget why. Let's not forget that I'm not beholden to whatever people say about it. I'm not, I should be grateful for the kindness people show, but ultimately, it's not like I have an obligation necessarily, and I shouldn't feel, I guess, pressured to take what people were saying as a sort of, I guess, like, rating or like a performance. Because for a time that was the case. But now I can kind of just post stuff and be happy that I posted it, and then not bother with it at all after that. Like, with the Harley Quinn thing I posted on Twitter, a lot of people were very nice about it, and they were like, hey, you should do this with Poison Ivy or something. And I like Poison Ivy for sure. Like, I think she's a really cool character. But I'm not gonna do another version of it, because the Harley Quinn thing was a lightning in a bottle sort of idea, where I had an idea over lunch break and I was like, okay, you know what? I want to make it. I'm gonna make it. And I did. And then I was done and I'm like, okay, cool. That's it. That's the idea. And people were like, you should make more. I'm not going to. Because I didn't think of a Poison Ivy idea. I still don't have an idea for a Poison Ivy version of it. And to make it would be to take into consideration other people's ideas on what I should draw. And I don't really have any interest in it. So I'm not going to do it. But that would not have been my reaction a couple years ago. I would have been like, oh shit, yeah, I guess I should do a Poison Ivy one. It's only proper, right? Because, like, I should have a set. Like, people want to see a set. A set's a great idea. I should make the set. I'm not gonna make the set. Harley Quinn's fine on her own. It was a cool idea. I liked it. I really liked that Harley Quinn drawing. And she will remain as she is. It's kind of a novel choice, honestly. Like, when I made it, I was like, oh shit. Whoa. It's not really that crazy of a decision, though. To think the ability to say no would rock my world. Actually, I'm going to be honest, and this isn't a new thing, but, like, recently I've contemplated, like, my relationship with a lot of my work, because I do, I think, spend a lot of time working and thinking about the work that I've picked up in the past, and just realizing in the past, like, year or so, not only have I turned down opportunities I would have loved to take a year ago, but also I've started turning down opportunities that I just wasn't interested in. And it was like a novel concept. Like, hey, I could just say no to a project I don't want to work on. Before, I literally never did that, because I was like, oh, I need to work. All work is good. Must hustle. Not hustling is bad. It means I'm a bad artist. I'm a bad worker. I need to keep hustling and doing work and all that stuff. No. If I don't want to work on your project, I'm gonna say no. That has been particularly liberating. It's been great. Which, I think Ivy's really cool, and I've always really liked the pairing. But I don't know. I've thought about it. I'm like, what would an Ivy version of that look like? And I haven't had an idea, so I'm just like, well, I guess I don't have an idea for it, so. Any tips on getting that Street Fighter vibe to the proportions? Street Fighter, by the notions that it's a fighting game, have very specific stylistic demands. Now, a lot of people clown on it for it, but I mean, it makes sense. Fighting games are, especially ones that deal primarily in melee combat, there's a certain degree of readability that has to happen because it is a competitive game. So, with Street Fighter and a lot of fighting games, there's an emphasis on the proportion of the body and how you balance that. Predominantly, a lot of them use bigger extremities like hands and feet because those are where most of the action makes contact. You're using leg sweeps and jumps and potentially projectiles, but they're coming from your hands or your feet or something like that. So those elements have to be exaggerated to make sure that when a player is making split-second decisions, they know where all of those things are on screen. That's why in certain games, readability is part of what can make or break someone's experience playing a game. If they can't see the character against the background, that impacts their ability to perform. And so if you're looking at Street Fighter, a way that you can kind of copy that style is by looking at what is it that the what are the like hallmarks of that style which define or like which have, I guess, implications in terms of gameplay or utility. With Street Fighter specifically, you have stocky builds, right? Because they want character to read on screen. Every character has a certain player fantasy. A lot of them are super muscular. So you've got specific builds, even for the female characters. You have larger hands and feet. You have kind of exaggerated proportions, so that's kind of more of just a stylistic choice by Capcom. And then also Capcom has its own like personal tastes and preferences for like fashion and stuff, which I don't necessarily like. But, you know, so taking those hallmark ideas of what do they emphasize, what are commonalities across all their characters, and how do you adapt into that is how you replicate a style. Oh, I didn't zoom in that close. don't know. If you break it down to its basic parts, like, I feel like it's not necessarily difficult to achieve, but it just depends on how far you want to go with it. Yeah, it looks okay. Honestly, I've been having a problem with a lot of the faces I draw, so this is looking fine. If you have any VODs that we potentially might not have, I'd be really interested to see if we could share some of them, because currently looking to collect a bunch of the ones that I've missed, which is most of them. But I do want to start uploading them somewhere, so if you have any, like a collection of them, you should get in touch with Tojo and see if you can share. If any of you guys have saved VODs, which you're totally free to do, by the way, I'd be really down to see if we can grab any from before March of 2021. So if any of you guys have that, help us out. How do I cheat my way into the industry? I don't know. I feel like there's a kind of two different industries currently happening. It's like content creators, which students are typically more privy to, and then actual industry professionals, which typically they don't have like social media or anything like that, but they are not like, they're such big names that if you know them or work in the industry, you know about them. Like, I'm just starting to learn about all of these new people that have been in the industry for a long time, have made such a big impact, but they're just like not on social media, so it's impossible for students to ever learn about them. But then you have like people that do YouTube and stuff, and students know all about Proco and Raw Straws, but so it's like two different types of industry names, I guess. But how to cheat your way into the industry, I have no idea. Let's see. Okay. What's the name? This one. It is a PC. Yeah. Yeah, I don't personally mind because I don't really care. But yeah, other people have different etiquette, so keep that in mind. The folder is synced with the folder for... Oh, wait. Ahaha. Hold on. Let me check. Let me see. Mine doesn't automatically sort by a specific type charity. Okay. I see. Hold on. Let me put what I just did in the folder. Where did I save it to? Okay, I will fix that in a sec. Yeah, we're working on getting kind of like a more complete channel up and running with all the VODs, because a lot of people have mentioned to me like, hey, I want to watch your streams because I can't make it, and I'm like, wow, I just can't ever seem to remember to save them. So I am definitely going to be doing that. I'm probably going to end it here, but if any of you guys have like last minute questions and stuff, we could definitely do that. Otherwise, I'm going to find someone to raid so that we can end the night off by supporting a small creator on Twitch, hopefully. Are there art jobs that would allow you to create art for yourself? Typically, a lot of those are self-employed type jobs, so if you were to do like a Patreon type thing and people pay you to make art, that's typically where that happens. Or if you were like an indie developer or something like that, that's not technically a job, you just kind of get into it, and if you start monetizing it, then it becomes a job. But yeah, so I don't know if there are a ton of places that actually like pay you to do your own stuff. You typically have to be kind of a larger name to get that rolling, but I can't say it's impossible now that, you know, people can monetize whatever art they want to make if they, you know, invest in some of the other, like, I don't know what places like Patreon are called, like subscription-based stuff. I don't know. But it's possible now. I just don't know necessarily if it's easy to do it. But yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. I think I'll be around next Friday. So we'll definitely, you know, hopefully continue what we're working on, and I can keep answering questions and stuff like that. And we'll be on our way. Do I have a recommendation for a laptop for art that is around $800? I don't know if any laptop around that can really run anything beyond a couple art programs, but honestly, like, all you really need is a laptop that can run a single art program and a tablet, which doesn't really need any software power. So you could get a pretty basic laptop. I think it's worth investing in one that lasts for a while. If you use Adobe programs like Photoshop or something like that, Macs are pretty good for it. Apple products are generally really well built for Adobe. But even like Clip Studio Paint, I think, has a Mac version. And a bunch of other art programs also have Mac versions. So I'd say you don't have to get an Apple laptop. I'm just saying that, like, there are certain types of things that are built for certain programs. Some work better than others. I would recommend kind of saving up a little bit more and just investing in one that'll last you longer than getting like a cheap laptop that's probably gonna bug out, might have connection issues, stuff like that. Okay, I think I found someone to raid, but yes, thank you all so much for hanging out with me and asking me questions. It's always really fun getting to talk with you guys. I've picked someone that we're gonna raid, so make sure you treat them all really nicely, and I'll see you all next week.